Hi everyone, I'm Zoe. I'll be talking about the misconceptions of open source intelligence, which is also known as OSINT. I'll start off with a little bit about myself first. I am from Sydney, Australia, which is a beautiful place surrounded by water, ocean, beaches, beautiful city, absolutely lovely. I mean, my accent kind of gives that away a little bit. I have more recently, though, I spent most of my life living in Australia, but for the past year, I have been living in Atlanta. And as you can tell, I am a complete and utter nerd. I love Comic-Con. Atlanta Comic-Con is awesome. But more recently, I actually am senior intelligence analyst at Dark Horse Intelligence. This is kind of what my day-to-day job looks like. This is actually very, very relevant. I do OSINT, I do social engineering, human intelligence, and even surveillance, counter-surveillance. And this is incredibly accurate of what my computer and the intel that I'm grabbing is kind of constructed to be like. On the side, I'm also a polygrapher. So this is actually my husband. He volunteered, I promise. I did not hold him against his will. He volunteered for polygraph. I thought it was pretty game of him to do that. I also organized Blue Team Village, which we started at DEF CON 26. We did DEF CON 27, and now we're going to be back again for third year, which is awesome, at DEF CON 28/Safe Mode, which will be virtual. I was former director of Trace Labs and used to help run the CTFs. And now one of my more recent things that I've been doing is working on the Innocent Lives Foundation, and what they actually do is they help unmask child predators online. So what is open source intelligence? I mean, people always talk about OSINT. It's a huge buzzword. OSINT, intelligence, open source, that whole area is a huge buzzword. And, given the nature of Layer 8, there's probably many people here that know what OSINT is. So we're going to actually be digging in a little bit further than just what OSINT is, but actually be talking about, what is intelligence? What makes it intelligence? And then I'll be talking about conducting international OSINT on foreign targets. So this is kind of what the impression of OSINT is. Social media, emails, phone numbers, things that you find online about people. And yeah, that is pretty accurate, but there is actually a lot more to it than just that. Open source information, OSINT, versus open source intelligence. And there is actually a key difference in the definition of just collecting information on people from social media accounts to actually collecting intelligence on people. So OSINT is data collected from publicly available sources. And for those of you that are in OSINT, you'll notice that that sounds incredibly, very, very similar to the definition of OSINT. OSINT is the analysis of data collected from publicly available sources. And I think the key here is the analysis. If you're going to go out and you're collecting information, you have a bunch of IP addresses, you have a bunch of mobile numbers, you have a bunch of email addresses, social media accounts, Twitter handles, it is information. But once you're actually analyzing that and you're connecting the dots and you're actually giving that information some sort of relevance or context, that actually turns that information, the actual process of analyzing it, into intelligence. Data that has beneficial insight and relevance to an objective. That's the best way that I try to describe intelligence is, you have an objective, you have something that you're trying to find with a purpose. You have a purpose, a target, and data that is relevant, data that has insight and is actually going to be benefit to the overall objective. So this is a huge thing, link analysis. You might have heard of the term 6 degrees of separation, and this is where it comes from. Link analysis is key in OSINT, in conducting OSINT, in conducting investigations, in getting data. Having that link is fundamental and is what is able to actually make those connections. So LinkedIn is amazing for this. LinkedIn is a great example of link analysis. So see at the top, you've got John, first degree connection, Joe Gray, second degree connection, Jane, and the third degree connection. So what does that actually mean? And how is that relevant to OSINT? So first degree is a direct connection. So this would be like, a direct colleague you work with, your manager, your sister, your brother, your mum, your dad, direct family members, direct friends, anything that you have a direct connection with, your place of work, your bank, where you do your grocery shopping. This in LinkedIn, if I was to put this into a chart, this is basically a first degree connection. A second degree connection is an indirect connection. So that might be, someone else who uses the same bank as you, or someone else who goes to Publix or Kroger or Walmart. You've got the connection because you use the same you use the same place, but you're not directly connected. You're connected to the first degree though, and this is kind of where it gets a little bit more complicated, because obviously you hear the term 6 degrees of separation, and that is because there are 6 degrees of connections that you can have. And in terms of LinkedIn, this is what that would look like. So for example here, John is my first degree connection, Joe is John's first degree connection. And because of that, Joe is my second degree connection. And so you can imagine that the more degrees back you go, the more complicated it gets. And so the reason why this is relevant is because, if you're conducting, intelligence on a particular target or a subject, you don't just want their first degree connections. You want to know who are they connected to through other people. If you're looking at malicious actors, or if you're looking at, phishing attacks, there are probably multiple degrees of connections that go back further than just the first degree. So then there's, the last kind of major degree is the third degree, which is an indirect connection, but it's directly connected to the second degree. And this chart looks a little bit crazy. I won't lie, it's a lot to take in. This is what this looks like. So you've got Jane, who's a first degree connection of Joe, Joe, who's a first degree connection of John, and then John, who's a first degree connection of me. And so because of that, Joe is my second degree connection, Jane is John's second degree connection, and Jane is my third degree connection. And this is really relevant when you're conducting any form of intelligence gathering. As I had mentioned, there are multiple forms of, links. It could be, a link might be people that you went to high school with, a teacher that taught you in college. It could be a previous manager. It could be the place that you bought your car from. And having, when you're conducting any form of intelligence, even when you're conducting, pen tests, these links is what, gets us more intelligence and helps us kind of build those building blocks to, gathering information and building up a bit more of a profile of someone. In another aspect, I guess it's also what helps, directly connect people to certain things. It helps helps with, say for instance, you have someone that has robbed a bank, right? Having that first degree connection is what helps you, not just have a suspect, but helps you actually be like, yeah, that person did do it because they have a first degree connection. Because of this or because of that, because, maybe they had, maybe they were a user, there's so many different degrees there. This is actually the most common form of, link analysis that we should all be familiar with. An organization chart, company structures. This is just using it in day-to-day life. So link analysis is actually what turns information into intelligence. If you have, as I had said, a bank robbery. If you have a bank robbery and you have 10 suspects, having that link is actually what helps you narrow down from those 10 suspects to maybe 8 suspects or 5 suspects to then eventually down to 1 suspect. That link is what turns intelligence also into evidence. In OSINT, we need evidence of things. We can't just go out and go, yep, I think this might be this person's mobile number, not sure, not 100% sure, might be, could be. Having that direct link is what turns a maybe into a yes, this is definitely that person's mobile number. So just to kind of break it up a bit, before I go into the next section, I thought I'd do a little bit of an exercise. So this is my husband and I walking our dog. I actually posted this on Twitter a couple months ago, and just for the fun of it, I was like, where am I? And I didn't actually think I was going to get so many people direct message me the exact geo coordinates of where I was standing. It kind of, being an intelligence, like I obviously, I do geospatial intelligence, and I was like, yes, of course, people can locate me, but actually having a bunch of people, inbox you your longitude and latitude was a little bit creepy. So I thought I would put that in here because I wanted to actually go through the steps, that some people took and the steps that I would take, as an investigator. If I just had an image, and I wanted to kind of, work out whereabouts is this person. So to also note, some people had a bit of an advantage because some of them actually knew me and they kind of knew what area I lived in. But there was like 5 or 6 people who didn't know me at all and they were still able to get it. So I actually kind of spoke to all of them, worked out like, what methods and strategies did you use? And then I also conducted those same methods and strategies myself. So that way I could also come to the same conclusion. And yes, it is absolutely possible to work out, not knowing me at all, you can work out exactly where I am standing. And I'm going to go through just some basic steps of how I did that. So, let me go back. Okay, so first of all, just looking at this image, there are a few key things. Well, first of all, it's sunset, which probably doesn't tell us too much. It's winter, the leaves, well, it could be winter or fall or maybe early spring. There's no leaves on the tree. There's some buildings in the background. You might be able to zoom in and see what some of those names are. There's nothing too obvious there, but overall, the biggest first indicator was the cars. So some of you might know that in the United States, depending on what state you are living in, it is not required to have a number plate on the front of your car. I think there's 20 states out of the 50 that do not require license plates on the front. That was a really big indicator and a really big play into how these people were able to also locate. The other one is the building in the back is a First Citizens Bank. It's super, super blurry, but if you ultra zoom in, you can barely read it. If you squint a little bit, you might just be able to read it. But yes, it is a First Citizens Bank. And so I'm going to start with there. So knowing it's a First Citizens Bank, I just straight up went to Google and type in First Citizens Bank. And what do you know? They only operate in 18 states and the District of Columbia. So that actually, for starters, if you were to get a map of America and just cross out, every single state they don't operate in, you're left with 18 states and DC. So that's a really good indicator already. So from there, knowing that the cars don't actually have number plates on the front, as you can tell from the previous image, all those cars, there are no number plates on the front. So I was able to narrow that down to the circled states. So how I did that was I just went and went to the website of First Citizens and looked at what states do they operate in. And then I just got this map and just kind of overlaid the states that they operate in versus the states that only require a back license plate. So you can see there's still not too many. The numbers next to the circles are actually how many branches they have in that state. So Arizona had 3 branches, Kansas only has 1 branch, Oklahoma has 2. More on the East Coast, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, they all had 10 branches in those states. So we're still left with a really, really wide chunk. But considering that there are 50 states, I think we've done so far a pretty good job at narrowing it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10 states. So from there, what I actually did, this is a bit of a long process, and there are, in OSINT, there are going to be some manual things. Unfortunately, you can't automate everything, and there might be a tool that can do this possibly that I don't know about. But in this aspect, this next bit was really, really manual. It only took about 3 hours to complete though, so it wasn't too lengthy, but it worked. It actually did work. So if you're looking for something that's effective, you might have to be a little bit patient with how long it's going to take you to get that information. So I actually went to Google Maps, and I started in Florida. Haven't been to Florida, want to go to Florida, so I thought, why not start with Florida? And I just went to the First Citizens Bank website in Florida, brought up all their 10 branches, and started going through just individually, one by one, what are the surrounding suburbs? Like, what are the surrounding, what's surrounding it? As you can see, there's palm trees, the roof is red, there's some beautiful bushes outside, it was on a main road. So going back to the other image, if I go back 2 slides, so looking at that and comparing it, I could straight away tell, as someone who's done this, as someone who is maybe potentially new into looking at images to finding locations, it might take you a little bit longer. But for me, as I've done this quite a few times before, I could straight away tell that that is definitely not the same place. That is not the same building. Even though it looks very similar, it's not the same building. And the indicators for that, where there are no palm trees, if you actually go to Google Maps and really zoom in on that building, there's not a single palm tree. There's also no palm trees surrounding as well. And the big indicator was the color of the roof. The color of the roof in this particular image is like a navy blue, black, maybe gray color. In this image, it is red, and it's a completely different building. So I did that for each location. So yes, in Florida, there were 10 locations. So I did that for each of the 10 locations in Florida. And then I did that for all the locations in Oklahoma, basically all of these states that have a number next to it. I went to each individual location on Google Maps and basically went, is this it? And yeah, there's probably quicker ways to do it. You could have a look at, maybe the temperatures in that time and see, this particular person was wearing jeans. They were in a short sleeve t-shirt though, which means at that particular time, even though it's winter, it mustn't have been too cold. So there were probably other ways you could narrow it down. But for me personally, I found, as an analyst, for me, the most effective way was to just go one by one from start to finish, start at Arizona, then go to New Mexico, Kansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and make your way down until you've basically looked at all of these buildings to identify whether or not that is the building. And as I had said, yes, it is a long process. This took about 3 hours to do in total. Could have taken longer, but at the end of the day, I achieved the result that I was looking for, and it was somewhat effective. So moving forward, this was another place, Atlanta, Dunwoody. I was able to tell that this is not it as well. The color of the roof is the same. So I looked at it for a little bit. I'm thinking maybe this could be it. They've also got across the road, they've got the grassy field as well. Looks to be near some main roads. It could be. But further zooming in, if I were to zoom in on this photo, it's actually a red brick building, and it's not very obvious unless you look at the chimney and some of the bricks there. But yeah, it is actually a red brick building. And as I had indicated, this building is not red bricks. So moving on to the final one, this is where I was. This big grassy oval paddock looking thing here is where I was standing. And as someone who has come across this image, there are ways that you can identify and confirm that using the surrounding buildings. For starters, the actual Cumberland building that is listed up here, we can look at that and we can look at the color of the paint, the color of the roof, how many stories is it? We can see it's roughly got 4 stories because there's four windows going vertical. Little key factors like this we can use to identify. The other thing is this, in the middle of the screen, just near the paddock, there's a big apartment complex, and the bottom of the apartment complex looks like it's red. There's like a big red strip. So we're actually able to use different paint colors, different styles of trees, all of those different aesthetics to determine and confirm if this is the location. So going back, I actually used this red building here in the middle of the screen, the big apartment complex that has the red building, the red color along the bottom of it. I was able to confirm that that is the same building as the image, as the building just on the right here, near where the cars are. That's the same. It has the same aesthetic. It has the white paint up the top, and then the red brick down the bottom. So those were some steps that I took. And as I said, you can do this on many images. Obviously, there's images that are going to be harder than that. But really, it was just to demonstrate that it is possible. And it kind of surprised me having so many people inbox me my location. I was like, well, okay, that was kind of creepy. So the next thing is international OSINT, and I'm talking outside of the US. So as I had indicated, I am not from the United States. I'm actually Australian. And so I learned OSINT. I didn't learn how to do OSINT on people within Australia first. I actually learned how to do international OSINT first. When I was in Australia, lots of the people that I was doing OSINT on were in other countries. They were in America, they were in Canada, they're in Japan or China, or they're in Europe somewhere, London. And it actually kind of got to my attention that there are some really common mistakes that people are making when they are conducting international OSINT. For starters, one of the biggest things is because it is international, it's something you're not familiar with. You're told to go out and look for OSINT on someone who is in another country. And, you living in, for example, me currently living in America at the moment, you might not know much about other countries, or you might not know what tools they use or social media platforms they use. And yeah, it was actually, it was definitely an interesting experience learning international OSINT first over just OSINT within the US and now obviously Australia. So I thought I'd give a bit of some examples of ways that will make your life and your searching so much easier when doing international targets. And the same also goes with not just people, like, if the person is international, but also like international companies. International companies operate completely different. Like, there might be, for example, Microsoft. There's a Microsoft in Australia, there's a Microsoft in New Zealand, there's a Microsoft in the US, there's probably one in Canada, but each one will probably operate completely different because the countries operate differently. And it can be a bit overwhelming, especially, if you're not sure where to start. So hopefully this will help clarify some things in that aspect. So this is the one that I have learned the most, is do not append the country name for search. And what I mean by that is this. When you're in a country doing, if I was to just type in social media sites, typically people doing OSINT, I've seen it so many times, they'll just append the country name. Like, social media, like top 10 social media sites in Europe, top 10 social media sites in Australia, top 10 social media sites in the US. And it is accurate to an extent. Like, yes, you are going to get some results of social media sites that are used in China, social media sites that are used in Australia. But the biggest thing is that Google knows where you are. Google knows, okay, so you're in the United States and you want to know the top 10 social media sites in China. So we're going to give you the top 10 social media sites that Americans probably use, that also Chinese people probably use. So you'll probably get things like WhatsApp, Kik, your more typical social media sites and platforms that Americans and Chinese people collectively use. Same thing if you were doing it in Europe. You'll get a combination, but you're not going to actually get the information as if you're a local. And that's the biggest thing, is when you're conducting international OSINT, you want it as if you're a local person there. You don't want to kind of hear it through get information through a third party kind of source. You want it through this, an actual source of that country. For example, if I was to conduct international OSINT on an Australian company, I would, let's just say for the sake, it's a business. I would want to actually go to an Australian website and get the information off an Australian site about that company, not off a American website that's talking about how Australia does things. There is a bit of a difference there, because you're hearing it, I guess, as the saying, you're hearing it directly from the horse's mouth. I don't know if that's a common saying over here, but essentially you're hearing it from an actual local entity who lives in that country, and that actually is a really, really big factor of the intelligence that you're getting. So I went to social media sites in China, and you get stuff like this. You get your WeChat, you get your Baidu, and yes, as I had said, to an extent, some of this is actually accurate, but you'll find that this is more your kind of, it's more aimed for the wider community, whereas you want to use and have access to what the locals are using. There's so many different platforms. It is absolutely ridiculous the amount of different platforms that are out there that we don't even know about. It is overwhelming, the amount of data and information and sites and websites that we can get intelligence off. And I think that will really actually help us in terms of making these results more accurate. Use a reliable VPN, and it's actually not for the purpose that you're thinking of. Typically, yes, in cybersecurity and OSINT, we use VPNs all the time. We'll put a VPN into Europe or a totally different country, and typically, we use that because we want to hide our footsteps, and that makes complete sense. But in the realm of OSINT, you don't want to put your VPN in just any country. You want to put it in the country that you're doing OSINT in. So say, for instance, if I am in the United States of America and I'm doing OSINT on Sydney, Australia, I'm not going to go and put my VPN in Brisbane or Perth or Melbourne. That just wouldn't make any sense. I would put my VPN in Sydney. And the reason for that is because, once again, it goes back to that whole, you get the local information. Because Google all of a sudden goes, oh, hey, actually, you are actually in Sydney. We're gonna give you stuff as if you actually live there. It's that whole kind of, you're not looking at information from a third party, you're actually getting that information directly. And obviously, depending on what your target is, this would vary. So the other thing is, having that there are other ways to do it as well. So you can actually, I know that Google has settings and other web browsers have settings where you can actually go into the settings and you can change the country you're in. And I haven't actually reliably tested that myself to see if there is a difference in the results, but I can 110% confirm that if you are conducting OSINT and you have your VPN in a different country other than what you're conducting the OSINT in, it will impact your searches. Yes, you're probably still going to find some awesome stuff, but it'll be so much more easier having your VPN in the right place. And that's something that people don't really think about. I was helping a friend of mine with some OSINT stuff, and he had his VPN set into like Russia, and the country that he was conducting OSINT on was London, and I couldn't work out. You get a lot better information, a lot more relevant information, a lot more accurate information being in that actual country. So, okay, this is a funny one. This is a bit of a funny one. This goes back to the whole VPN thing. Google and artificial intelligence and machine learning. Let me tell you, this stuff it's clever as hell. It is sneaky, it is clever, and you wouldn't even realize that it's all there until I had moved countries, that I really was like, wow, like the stuff that I'm now exposed to on Google is totally different. So this is a classic example of why you need to have your VPN or your country settings in the location of where you are doing your intelligence. So I currently I didn't have a VPN on at this time. I went to Google. So obviously I'm in America. So Google's like, hey, you're in America. I went to Google and I typed in a picture, which some people call a jug. Here apparently it's called a picture. And of course, we're in America. Google knows, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, they know the language we use. They know what we in North America call things, and they have adapted for that. They have learned off that, and they have actually intentionally changed our searches to, really reflect what they think we're wanting to search. So I typed in picture and I got a picture. I changed my VPN to Australia. And from those of you that are from that might be listening, that are from Europe or Australia or New Zealand, as you would know, we don't call it a picture, we call it a jug. And so of course, when I went to Australia with my VPN in Sydney and I typed in a picture, I got the picture plant because we don't call it a picture, it's a jug. And this goes back to the whole aspect of knowing everything about the country that you're wanting to conduct intelligence on. You don't want to just be looking, you don't want to be on the outskirts just looking in. You want to be in there knowing exactly what the locals are using, knowing what the locals eat, knowing, do they catch buses, trains. Obviously this varies on your objective. What is it that you're wanting to get in, open source intelligence on? But this is a really, really common error. People aren't aware of the language differences, and so when you're searching for things, you might not be using the right terminology or the right words, and because Google's picking you up in a particular location, it will change your results. So I put the VPN in Japan and I put in picture, and same thing, of course I got a Japanese picture, but this time it was an actual baseball picture. And this just goes to show how much our information is actually tailored to what we type in, what we know, and where we are. And with open source intelligence, we want to narrow that down to be very, very specific, So it's just a classic example. And obviously, if we were to change the VPN to another country, the same thing would occur. And just to state, all three of these, I put in the exact same word, just picture, and complete different results. So you got to know the local language. If you're looking for things, knowing what the common terminology is going to help you, because a lot of the things that different countries use different abbreviations. That's a huge one. I know that the UK and Australia and New Zealand and a lot of Europe abbreviate the hell out of everything. Everything's abbreviated. And if you're looking for something and it's abbreviated, you're going to miss it because you don't know what the abbreviation is. And it's doing like the research on that country prior to just jumping in to into conducting your overall OSINT. So almost you want to almost do like a pre-investigation prior to your OSINT. You want to go into your OSINT knowing everything. You want to know everything about the demographic. You want to know about the population. You want to know, everything. And this is something that I have discovered with companies and many other organizations. The whole abbreviation thing is an issue. So if you have your VPN set into the USA and you just type in a CRN, you're going to get your all of your business documents, that company, your customer registration number, I believe is what that stands for. And the difference is that different countries do things completely differently. And so thus they have different protocols, different procedures, different words, different terminology. They have different places where you're going to find information. It is difficult doing international OSINT, especially if you're using like public databases in different countries where you're not really sure, what information you're going to get from there, or what to really look for. So going in, knowing what you're going to look for, knowing the correct terminology is going to save you so much time. So in Australia, we use an ABN number, Australian business number. Russia, they have a different one, OGRN/EGRUL. Mongolia uses a SIL number. So this knowing all this stuff is going to help a lot. So classic example of the VPN situation again. It really is a hindrance, like not being aware of that kind of stuff, because it is going to screw up your results. It's going to change the information you'll get, and it's not going to be as accurate. So here I have I don't actually have a VPN set, so locations just set to the United States. I type in an ABN, which is an Australian business number, and of course it doesn't come up because we're in America, and it's not going to look for that sort of stuff. I changed my VPN to Australia, and suddenly the second one, ABN lookup. So there we're actually getting the results of what we actually want, and this is how your search. This is how your searches, even other searches like Yahoo and Bing, do the exact same thing, which is frustrating. Doingbusiness.org is an awesome website. I highly recommend it. You can get some amazing resources on every single country. You can work out, okay, so what if you're doing OSINT on a particular business, and you know what countries they operate in, you can actually then go to doingbusiness.org and see the different requirements of a business, what's actually required to register that business, what's required to start up that business, and you just pick the country they're in, and it tells you everything. It tells you what type of do they use an ABN number, do they use a CRN, do they use a VAT number. They tell you everything you would possibly know, which is awesome. Not everyone uses Google, and this for some might be hard to believe, but there's actually a huge population that don't use Google, which is actually, as an OSINTer, is beneficial. And the reason for this is because part of what we're looking for is we're looking for intelligence, we're looking for evidence, we're looking for links to things. And we may not be able to find something on Google. Maybe there's a particular website that hasn't been crawled or web scraped by Google. But hey, if we go over to Bing or Yahoo, maybe their web crawlers have actually crawled that site that Google hasn't. So always check different search engines because there's going to be totally different sets of data. Things that are on Google, maybe Yahoo and Bing haven't crawled and they don't have. Things that are missing from Google, maybe other web browsers and other search engines do have. And I have found this super, super beneficial. The amount of times that I have looked outside of the realms of Google and have actually found what I'm looking for, I highly recommend if you search Google and it's not there, don't give up. Just go back in, try different search engines, try different web browsers, and you'll find something. So going back to not everyone uses Google, every country has their own kind of default search engine, which is crazy actually. Knowing that there are so many different search engines out there that have a preference over Google is just crazy to comprehend. Really, Google is used in Australia, New Zealand, and all of North America. But outside North America, Australia, and New Zealand, there are so many other search engines out there that are actually of preference. I know that in the kind of the UK region, London, the EU, their preference is Yahoo. Korea, they use Naver. China, Baidu. Czech Republic, a lot of them use Selman. Russia, Yandex. Sweden use Eniro. France has a good option. They have Bing, Orange, and Voila. So they have a really good variety there of other search engines we can use. And this goes back to knowing your subject, knowing where they're from, and actually really honing into that location. Yahoo. As I had said, a lot of people outside Australia, New Zealand, and North America use Yahoo. I was actually really surprised when I was, doing some research and reading statistics about it. I haven't used Yahoo for ever. I don't think I've ever used Yahoo, other than obviously conducting OSINT. But for like personal usages, I have never personally used Yahoo. So I thought it was quite surprising actually. So this is obviously a map of the world. So the blue that has Australia, New Zealand, a little bit parts of the North African regions, North America, Alaska, Canada regions. Those are countries that primarily use Facebook Messenger as their #1 source of communication. I mean, most people have Facebook Messenger, because it's common here. But the thing is that we have to, when conducting OSINT, we have to be aware that not everyone is like our culture. Not everyone uses culturally the same tools and technologies that we use. And every culture, every country has their own preference. The green bits, they primarily use things like Kik and WeChat and WhatsApp, and like other chat platforms that aren't really as commonly used. The purple, they have their own complete chat platform that I hadn't even heard of, that they just use in that particular part of the world. And I thought that was crazy that just that little section has their own complete section. So when you're doing your OSINT and you can't find someone on Facebook, and you can't find someone on LinkedIn, and you can't find someone on Snapchat or Instagram, you have to think, what does that culture and country use? Because in North America, we use Snapchat and we use Instagram, and everyone has Facebook, but you got to remember, not necessarily the rest of the world does. As I've said many times, it is different depending on the cultures. I believe Russia, so I don't even know how to pronounce that. Verkontake, I don't know how you say that, but that is basically their version of Facebook. So if you're looking for someone in Russia and they're not on Facebook, have a look there, because the chances are you will probably find them on there. Same with Korea. They have, you know, Naver. Naver was also a search engine. So Naver seems to be a search engine and is also a social media platform. So, you know, those types of platforms are critical when searching. China uses Douban, France. So Viadeo is like their version of LinkedIn. So yeah, you will probably find some people from France who are on LinkedIn, but a lot of the population probably would use more of their own local stuff. And I cannot stress this enough. You have to know the country as if you're a local. You have to think, okay, well, you know, I'm conducting intelligence from the United States, but I'm going to try and put myself as if I am in that country. So, you know, what methods of transportation do they use in Japan? What methods of transportation do they use in New Zealand, in Australia, and in the UK? You know, you have to really think about those, because when you're conducting intelligence, knowing those things is going to benefit your searches. Because, you know, if you know that most people in Sydney use an Opal card, which most people here probably have no idea what an Opal card is. But yeah, in Australia, we use this thing called an Opal card. You can track everything through the Opal card. And so if you're looking for someone in Australia and you want to track someone, the first place you would look is the Opal card. But you wouldn't know that unless you were to put yourself into the position of being into that country. So you have to really embrace the different cultures there and really work out, like, you know, what do they eat for breakfast? Do they use Uber? Do they use Uber Eats? You know, there's so many different variables there, and obviously this is completely dependent on what your target is. You know, if your target is a company, you know, you want to start looking into you know, business requirements, because that's a really big one where it's different in every single country. Whereas if you're actually looking for a person, you know, knowing the local social media platforms. This is an awesome site. Okay, this is a fantastic site. I use it all the time. iintelligence.eu. It's a European site. It is amazing. Makes my life so much easier, and it will make your life easier too. So companies, here you go. Here's an amazing resource. If you're doing OSINT on companies, company research links, depending on what location you're in, the EU, the UK, US, Switzerland, Middle East, every country you could possibly think of. But the same thing as well for national search engines. As I had said, not everyone uses Google, and we need to really think outside of the square when conducting intelligence, because there's just so many overwhelming platforms that we can look through. So here's an awesome list. Definitely head on over to that website, European site, and download the PDF document that they have. It's incredible. There's like 170 pages of foreign information, websites, URLs, links, pages, blogs, chats, everything you'd possibly want. And lastly, questions. I know that you guys don't have the ability to type questions into here. So if anyone does have any questions, if you head on into the Discord channel and go to track 1, and just feel free to just post any questions you have into track 1, that would be awesome. It would be best if you didn't direct message me any questions. The reasons for that is because if multiple people have the same question, I can then you know, answer that question in one hit. Cool, great. Thanks everyone for joining in, and I hope you all got something beneficial out of it. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well. My handle is just globally verbal. So feel free to follow me on there. Thanks so much for your time.